So let's look at the concept of interfaces in Java. So far we have seen multiple inheritance of classes, objects. We saw static class and we saw extended classes, properties, members. Now we look at something called as interface. We saw abstract classes, right? This is somewhat similar to that. Interface basically does not contain any implementation. It only contains a design. It's more of a standard. It is setting a standard for the subclasses to do the implementation. It contains only two members, public static final and public abstract methods. It cannot contain any of the ones others like this: instance variables, static methods, concrete methods, and constructor. It will contain only the signature. It is similar to an abstract class where you will only define the implementation, like how the method should be. Now, why do you want to do this? It's more like a design. Like if you want to create classes, but you want to make sure that some basic guidelines are being followed, some basic things are included in that. Okay, like you're creating an automobile, but there are some basic, at each and every step you have certain interface designs that you want to implement. So you use interfaces for that. You want to make sure that these are the parameters passed, these are the methods that are done in every class which implements your interface. So how do you define an interface? You say interface hello, and then you just define the method, the signature, or the variables. Okay. It is implicitly public and extract all the methods. All variables are by default public static final and have to be initialized during declaration. Mostly interfaces we will be looking at the method. When a class implements interface, then that class must override all the abstract methods. That is, that class which implements your interface has to override and implement all the methods. That is, you have to define the body for that. Now you take a look here. Now here, interface hello, this class implements hello. Now see, in the interface only the int add is given, whereas the implementation is in the class, similar to the abstract class that we created. Now couple of things in interfaces. Interface supports multiple inheritance. Now it's not there in class. One class can implement multiple interfaces. One interface can extend any number of interfaces. So this is the key difference between classes and interface. It supports dynamic polymorphism and a high level of decoupling and abstraction. It's a lot of abstraction, so what you want to do and what you want to implement are like in two different places. Interfaces cannot be instantiated. You cannot have an interface instance like a class. Okay, it is open completely for implementation. Does not contain any implementation. It only contain the method signature. So let's take a look at this interface thing. Just a minute. So now I go to my package. Now I'll say new interface and I'll say automobile. Okay, or let me just think of we'll say automobile. And now our interface is ready, public interface. So I'll just say public, it will have wheels, sorry, it will have seats, and of course it will have doors. Okay, so here you say public built car. How it is implemented depends on you. I'll create a new class here. Or for the sake of this one, what I'll do here is, in my branch I will implement. This is already extending implements automobile. So when it says this, it is going to tell me implement all the methods. So the build car has got implemented. Right now we don't have any complex logic to build on, so we will print and say this car has seats, 4 wheels, 2 doors. So now this car has 4 wheels and 4 seats. Okay, so now what is basically is happening is I'm making sure that this car will implement this automobile, and if they are implementing this automobile, they should build a car. As simple as that. And now one more thing I would say, I'll create one more interface. I want to make sure that when a car is being built, they should make sure that it has an engine also, correct? I can add it in the same interface, but I'm going to add it in a separate interface. So this is the second interface, okay? So I'm just saying add engine, and I'm going to implement this again here. So now you can see multiple inheritance here happening. It's going to also implement this engine. Okay, now when you say this, it's going to again say add the unimplemented methods. See this. So which unimplemented methods of engine? So add engine. Should have okay, so I can again add this add engine. So I want to make sure that when this happens, when the car is being built, I also make sure that the add engine is also added. Alright, so I say add engine 100, and I'm going to run this. So when I run this, the car has 4 wheels and this engine should have 100 power. It's just a unit. So this concept of multiple inheritance this code will make it clear for you. So this is basically extending one class, implementing multiple interfaces. Okay, so interfaces can only contain the signature of a method. How to implement depends on you. Next, let's look at some more topics of packages. Now packages we already seen, their containers are used for storing all type of user types. So used for organizing set of related classes. You basically use import, you create a package and then you give the package.package name. So like if you see package.com.sun, so you can use this, if packages are there, you can, basically it is used for bundling your classes. We already use packages, right? And there are some out of the box packages which Java gives you. Like so see our package here. If you see, remember, we had put this in oops concept, this package, and this oops concept employee we are using here. Now when you say import dot, it will show you the members of that. Right now it contains only one member. So like this there are a lot of other things, and this whole thing has been packaged into package 2. So this package 2, if I use somewhere else, all these classes will get included in that, including this package. Okay, so that is the use of this package concept. Similarly, once you use the package, you have to import the class stored in one package into another. Generally, a class stored in one package has to be used in another package with a fully qualified class name. Or you can also give .star will load everything, but if you give the specific class name, it is good. So there are various ways in which you can call it. A fully class name seal, it's like java util.linklist. If you want to get only one particular like linked list and don't want to load all the other libraries, you will give that particular class name. The import keyword also helps in importing class stored in one package to be used in another package. To import all the classes inside the util package, import java util.star. What it will do? It will import all the packages within the java.util. All the classes will get loaded. Next, let's look at the concept of exception handling in Java. Now, whenever we run any program, exceptions can occur, right? Errors can occur at any time. So, how do you handle them? That is what is the concept of exception handling. If you don't handle exceptions, the user will get a dirty message on the screen. This error, the most typical error that you work in your computers irrespective of the language you use. Don't you all get the blue screen of death sometimes? You don't know what is happening. So that is a very bad way of handling exception by Windows. I don't blame anyone, but always you should handle program exceptions gracefully. So exception runtime errors which cause the programs to terminate but can be handled. That is an exception. The mechanism of handling the runtime error and maintaining the normal execution of the program is exception handling. So there are 5 keywords which is used in exception handling. Try, catch, finally, throws, throw. Try, catch, you will create a block, and then finally catch will catch the exceptions, anything within the try block. Any exception will go to the catch, and then finally will happen. And if you want to explicitly throw some exceptions, you have to use throws or throw. So in a method, you write a block code which is subject to creating an exception. Try should be used with catch or finally or both. The catch block is used to catch the exception created in the try block and fix the error. Always try catch has to be required, the basic. Others are optional. Also, one try block can have multiple catch statements, but the exception class will be the last, the major exception class. Let's look at the syntax here. See here. Try, curly brace, catch, exception, and within the right side you see the example. Catch exception E. Now exception, basically multiple exception blocks are allowed. If you want to execute some statements without fill, write the code in the finally block. Like if after the try and catch, irrespective whether there is an exception or no, you want some code to execute, you will write it in the finally. Finally will always run. It is always guaranteed to execute whether exception is raised or not. If exception is raised, it will go into the catch block, right? Otherwise it will be going to finally. You cannot use return statement to stop. Only system.exit can stop the execution of the final block. So let's see an example. Now let's also look at throws. It is used at a method level to propagate an exception. Now suppose you want to mandatorily purposely create a throws. It is used throws if the method is throwing checked exceptions to the caller method. Like say for example, if you know your code may generate these kind of exceptions which are already there in Java, there are some checked exceptions, IO class not found, then you say like throws this exception. Otherwise then it will handle those exceptions. Okay, so here you see if you are actually throwing this exception, you know these are being thrown, so then you'll have to use the throws keyword. Now if you want to create a custom exception inside a method, then you can use the throw keyword. Now look here, the catch block is present in the same method, it will catch it. If the catch block is not present, exception object is thrown to the caller method. To make this throw keyword work, now you have to subclass extend throwable. If you don't extend throwable, you cannot use throw. Now look at this piece of code here. So here it is, you're throwing an exception, arithmetic exception. Throw new, you will always create a constructor of the class and pass the parameter. Let's look at the difference between throw. Throw is used to explicitly throw an exception, whereas throws is used to declare an exception that your method is going to run like this. The second line shows the example of both. Checked exception cannot be propagated using throw only. Checked exception can be propagated with throw. So you can call checked exceptions. And truth, you can tell them the checked exceptions can be called. For throw, you have to create a new instance. In this case, you will just create a throw new class. You cannot throw multiple exceptions, whereas here you can declare multiple exceptions in throws. So let's look at this whole concept of try catch. Okay, and understand this. So let's go back to one of our classes here. And I'm going to write a small exception handler here. So how do you write this? You create a try catch block. And e dot get message, you just print it. Okay. You have to go to the try catch block and you can print this. Now you have to put this code inside this. Okay. So now we have to generate an exception here. So what I'll do here is I'll purposely generate an exception here. What I'll do here is I will say I'll create a local variable and I'll say x equal to. So if you see here, it has printed this divide by 0. Now if I don't give this exception, let's see what happens. See, this error has thrown, a dirty error has thrown, right? Exception divide by 0. So now this is the whole concept. So like this, there are numerous exceptions which will happen at runtime. As we build the project, we can get into that. Right now, understand this concept with this example. So basically how it works is you have a try which is inside curly brace, then all the code that you want to check will be here. Any exception. Now if you change this to a try catch block, see these red lines will go away and it will be handled properly. Just a minute, there's some error here. Make sure that all open starting curly brace has got ending brace. This is a practice that you need to do, okay? Initially you will run into errors. It's not so easy as it looks. So now you have handled this exception. So like this you can have multiple exceptions. Sorry, IO exception E. So if you have this, if at all we come across this null pointer exception, it will work. One more rule is exception always, the common exception should always be the last. If you save this and run this, it will give you an error. It will tell you null pointer exception is uncatchable. No, it's not reachable. The reason for that is this catch exception, you have to keep it the last. Okay, you can't keep it at before any other generic exception. Specific exception, sorry. Okay, so and then the next we look at throws. So here it is informing the compiler that null pointer exception is thrown. And now suppose I want to explicitly throw in, then in that case I'll have to okay. So just give this a try. We'll also look at, or maybe I'll create another explicit class. And now we will also have to say, so let us just see this running. So now it has created an exception here. Custom exception has got executed. So what happens here is we say that it is going to throw this my exception, and you create a new instance of this class and call this. So this gets executed. Now what is happening is when you create an custom exception, your own exception, you'll have to create a class name. Can be anything, but it should end with exception. Okay, if you create a custom exception, your class name should end with exception, and it should be extending the throwable class. As I'm telling you, this class name should end with exception and it should extend the throwable class. Then you should have a constructor here, right? So now here what you do is when you say throw new, you're calling the constructor. You want to pass some custom message, you can pass it. Right now I just hard coded it, but basically it throws this exception. Okay, so please pause the video here, write and go through all of this code, the try, catch, exception, and then the throw and the throws. Okay, then we can proceed to the next topics.